Most people are not held back by a lack of talent. They're not stopped by their surroundings, their parents, their job, or their education. They're trapped by a silent architect living in their own minds. And that architect has been drawing the same crooked blueprint over and over again until failure becomes inevitable. Look around. The world is full of people running in circles, convinced they're chasing success when really they're just circling the same mental patterns that have kept them stuck for years. Not because they want to fail, but because they've built a life on the wrong foundation, one built from doubt, from scarcity, from fear wrapped in the disguise of realism. The truth no one wants to admit: most people fail long before they ever take action. Failure doesn't begin when the business collapses. It doesn't start when the relationship falls apart. It doesn't ignite when the opportunity slips through their fingers. It begins the moment they accept an inner world that contradicts the life they say they want. The moment they choose safety over courage. The moment they justify their limitations as facts. The moment they label dreams as unrealistic to protect a comfort zone that's slowly killing them. That's where failure is born, in silence, in shadows, in thoughts no one hears. Your results will never outrun your mental blueprint. You can only build what your inner world allows. And if the 99% keep getting the same results, average, frustrated, stuck, settling, it's because they've inherited a belief system built by other failures. They were handed blueprints of mediocrity, and they keep wondering why their lives reflect exactly that. But the 1%, they tore those blueprints up. They didn't inherit greatness. They rewrote the code. They looked in the mirror and said, "I will no longer accept a mind that's working against me." They understood that nothing changes until your internal world is upgraded. See, you can't live like a lion while thinking like a sheep. You can't dominate your field while doubting your right to even be in the game. And you sure as hell can't attract abundance while clinging to a scarcity mindset. This is what separates the 1%, not just intelligence or luck or timing, but a ruthless commitment to align their mindset with the life they demand. They do not negotiate with doubt. They do not reason with fear. They do not ask permission from mediocrity. They rewire their thoughts like Edison re-engineered the night. They saw resistance not as a stop sign, but as the birthplace of mastery, just like Carnegie did when the steel mills screamed with chaos. They understood that clarity begins in the mind before it manifests in reality. Most people never make it because they're mentally fogged, emotionally distracted, and spiritually disconnected from their purpose. They try to move forward while their mind clings to backward. They set goals with no vision. They chase money without meaning. They wake up every day looking for motivation, not realizing that motivation is the effect, not the cause. The 1% think differently. They don't wait to feel ready. They decide they're ready. They don't ask for a sign. They become the sign. They don't conform to the world. They reshape it. Because clarity isn't something you find. It's something you create through mental discipline, ruthless self-honesty, and the courage to say, "This is who I am. This is where I'm going, and nothing will pull me off that path." When most people hit a wall, they stop. When the 1% hit a wall, they study the wall. Then they smash through it, climb over it, or build a new road entirely. Because they know every wall is just a mirror showing them the limits of their current belief system. If your life feels stuck, it's not the world holding you back. It's the outdated script in your mind telling you what's realistic. Rip that script apart. The 1% don't just believe in themselves. They install belief into their minds like an engineer installing new software. Daily, ruthlessly, with intention. Not just when they feel good, but especially when they don't. They understand that mindset is not a moment. It's a muscle, and muscles don't grow by reading quotes or watching feel-good videos. They grow by resistance, by doing the work when it's hard, when it's lonely. When no one is clapping, they don't get inspired. They stay inspired, because they know inspiration isn't a feeling, it's a discipline. They speak vision into the chaos. They turn pressure into power. They look into the storm and say, "I am the storm." While the masses drown in indecision, paralyzed by too many options, the 1% cut through noise with precision. Not because they always know the outcome, but because they know who they are. Clarity is identity. When you know who you are, what you want, and why you're here, you become dangerous. Because no one can sell you a smaller dream. No one can make you settle for less. No one can convince you that your greatness is arrogance. You become unshakable, not because life gets easier, but because your foundation becomes stronger. So ask yourself right now, what blueprint are you living by? Who handed it to you? Who told you what was possible? Whose voice is echoing in your mind when things get hard? Because if you don't take ownership of that blueprint, you will die with a life that was never truly yours. The 1% don't just dream. They design. They architect their future with the same obsession Da Vinci had for art, with the same tenacity Ford had for innovation, with the same divine defiance that built empires from nothing but vision. They understand that everything starts in the unseen, that your external world is just the residue of your internal belief system, and if your belief system is wired for limitation, no amount of hustle will override it. You can grind 18 hours a day, but if deep down you believe you're unworthy, you'll find a way to sabotage your own success. You'll make the money and lose it. You'll attract the opportunity and shrink from it. You'll get the attention and feel like a fraud, because your subconscious is always working to match your life with the image you hold of yourself. This is why the 1% spend more time upgrading their identity than their resume. They know success isn't just about doing more. It's about becoming more. They become more by eliminating the noise, the lies, the inherited beliefs that were never theirs to begin with. Because the most dangerous limitations aren't the ones the world puts on you. They're the ones you swallow without questioning. I'm not smart enough. I wasn't born into the right family. I don't have the resources. I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm not like them. Every one of those beliefs is a brick, and brick by brick you build your own prison, until one day you wake up surrounded by walls made of nothing but your own thoughts, and you call it reality. But reality is not fixed. It's flexible. It bends to the will of those bold enough to reshape it. The 1% understand that. They don't just live in the world. They mold it with their minds. They don't see circumstances. They see clay. They don't see obstacles. They see instructions. They don't see failure. They see feedback. While most people drown in overthinking, paralyzed by perfectionism and the fear of making the wrong move, the 1% act. They trust their vision more than they fear the unknown, because they know clarity does not come from standing still. Clarity comes from motion, from taking the step when you can't see the entire staircase, from walking into the fog with faith, knowing the path reveals itself to the bold. Most people need the full picture before they move. The 1% know the picture doesn't exist yet. They are the painters. They take the brush, they dip it into vision, not certainty, and they paint their future stroke by stroke, action by action, thought by thought, until the masterpiece reveals itself, not overnight, not instantly, but inevitably. Because the life you want will never come from the life you've settled for. You cannot birth greatness from the womb of comfort. You cannot live a legendary life while nursing mediocre habits. You cannot rise while clinging to everything that keeps you small. The 1% understand that every sacrifice is a seed, and every seed must die in the dirt before it reaches the light. They don't fear the darkness. They become something in the darkness, disciplined, focused, forged. Discipline is the currency of the uncommon. While the world scrolls and complains and points fingers, the 1% build. They rise early. They train their minds like warriors. They move with purpose. They speak with intention. They protect their time like it's sacred, because it is. They don't confuse movement with progress. They don't mistake busy work for purpose. They know the difference between productivity and distraction disguised as work. And they cut ruthlessly. Anything, anyone, any pattern that doesn't serve their destiny. The masses want motivation. The 1% want alignment. They don't wait for energy. They generate it. They don't rely on hype. They rely on standards. Because when your standards are high enough, discipline becomes automatic. You don't need to be reminded to do the work. You're insulted by the idea of not doing it. Discipline is not punishment. It's liberation. It's how the 1% free themselves from the chains of inconsistency, of laziness, of mental fog. Because discipline is how you show your future self that they matter. And the 1%, they are loyal to that future self. Most people betray their future. They trade long-term greatness for short-term comfort. They sell the mansion for a moment of relief. They betray the empire to please the village. But the 1%, they endure the loneliness. They embrace the isolation. They walk away from what's popular to walk toward what's powerful. They understand that greatness demands a season of separation from distraction, from conformity, from the noise of the crowd. Because when you're building something legendary, you don't need 100 voices. You need one, yours, the voice inside that says, this life is mine to create. This path is mine to walk. This fire is mine to feed. And feed it they do, daily, deliberately, without apology. The world tries to dim that fire, to guilt you for wanting more, to shame you for being ambitious, to call you arrogant for refusing average. But the 1% don't ask the world for validation. They don't beg for applause. They don't need external approval to live internal truth. Because when your purpose is pure, when your mission is rooted in something deeper than ego, when your mind is aligned with your soul, you become unstoppable. You become a force, not because life makes it easy, But because you no longer require ease, you only require one thing: forward, always forward, through the resistance, through the fatigue, through the noise, the doubt, the setbacks, the silence. Because they know the climb is always lonely, but the view is for those who stayed the course when it was darkest. And here's the final truth most people never realize: the 1% are not chosen. They're self-selected, not by luck, not by bloodline, not by some cosmic lottery. They're chosen by the decisions they make daily. When everyone else says, "I'll do it tomorrow," they do it now. When everyone else lowers the standard, they raise it. When everyone else surrenders to emotion, they master it. Because they know your emotions are passengers, not the driver. You respect them, you feel them, but you don't hand them the wheel. The 1% think differently because they choose to think differently. And that choice, repeated, reinforced, installed until it becomes a way of life, that's what rewires the blueprint. That's what creates new patterns. That's what builds an empire from the inside out. And here's what they know deep in their bones: you do not rise to the level of your dreams. You fall to the level of your habits. And your habits are nothing but the rituals of your beliefs. That means every action you take is a vote for the identity you either strengthen or betray. The 1% don't rise on motivation, they rise on identity. Because when who you are aligns with where you're going, you don't need willpower, you become the kind of person who just does the work. The masses look at success as something out there, something to chase. The 1%, they build it from within. They don't look for treasure, they become the map. They don't just seek opportunities, they become opportunity. They know it's not about what the world gives you. It's about what you extract from every moment. Every struggle, every failure, every silence. While most people complain about the rain, the 1% become the storm. They don't just weather adversity, they use it. They transmute pain into purpose. They turn wounds into wisdom. They take rejection, betrayal, and defeat and forge them into fire. They study the setbacks. They extract meaning from the chaos. They understand that life is not punishing them, it's sculpting them. And pressure isn't the enemy, it's the chisel of destiny. While others ask, "Why me?" they ask, "What's the lesson?" While others run from discomfort, they enter it like warriors, knowing that the cave they fear holds the treasure they seek. And that treasure, it's not just the gold, the money, the accolades, it's who they become. Because the 1% know that the real reward is evolution, that the prize is not the finish line, it's the transformation along the way. That success is not a destination, it's the residue of a forged identity. The world wants shortcuts, the 1% build character. The world wants comfort, the 1% seek challenge. The world wants praise, the 1% pursue truth, even if it burns. And that truth is this: your life will never rise higher than your standard of self. The way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And if you cut corners in private, you will bleed in public. If you lie to yourself in the dark, you will shatter under pressure in the light. This is why the 1% obsess over the invisible details, the tiny disciplines, the mental rituals, the inner conversations no one hears, because that's where power is born. Not in the crowd, not on the stage, but in the quiet, in the dark, in the moments when no one's watching, but they show up anyway. They show up when it's boring. They show up when it's thankless. Because greatness is not glamorous. It's consistent. It's showing up with excellence when no one's clapping. It's holding the vision when no one understands. It's saying no 1,000 times so you can say yes to the one thing that matters. And here's what sets them apart most of all: they're not afraid to start over. They're not afraid to change, to pivot, to adapt, to become unrecognizable to who they used to be. Because the 1% don't cling to identity. They evolve it. They don't fear outgrowing the world. They expect to. They understand that growth isn't a straight line. It's brutal. It's messy. It requires the death of who you were again and again and again. But to them, that death is sacred. It's not something to avoid. It's something to celebrate. Because every version of you that falls makes space for the version that rises. While most people resist change because it threatens their comfort, the 1% seek change because it protects their future. They do not romanticize struggle, but they do respect it, because they know struggle is not a punishment. It's an invitation to rise, to sharpen, to become the person their future demands. So they don't curse the storm, they sail into it. They grip the wheel tighter. They scream into the wind, "Is that all you've got?" Because they've made a decision, not a wish, not a preference. A decision that they will not die with their greatness locked inside. And once that decision is made, really made, everything changes. Your energy changes. Your focus sharpens. Your presence deepens. You walk into rooms differently. You speak differently. You think with precision. You move with fire. You no longer tolerate small talk, small dreams, small lives. You're not interested in surviving. You're here to build, lead, conquer. Because when your mind is forged in truth and your spirit anchored in vision, you don't wait for success. You summon it. You don't hope. You decide. You become. And when you become, when you decide with every fiber of your being that you are done playing small, that you are done seeking permission, that you are done being loyal to your limitations, that's when life starts to rearrange itself around you. Not before, not when you dabble, not when you try, only when you decide, not with your words, but with your pattern, with your movement, with your fire. Because the universe does not respond to what you say you want. It responds to who you are, to what you embody, to the energy you emit in the silence when no one is clapping. The 1% know this: your frequency is your fortune, and gratitude is the voltage. While most people live in a state of lack, constantly focused on what's missing, what's broken, what's wrong, the 1% train their minds to live in abundance, to see power in the present, to give thanks before the harvest, to bless the vision before it manifests. Because gratitude isn't weakness, it's weaponry. It's how you tell the universe, I'm ready for more. I'm already full. I already see it. Most people think, I'll be grateful when I have it. The 1% think I have it because I'm already grateful. They don't just count their blessings, they leverage them. They turn small wins into unstoppable momentum. They turn each breath into a moment of power, each sunrise into an affirmation, I'm still here, I'm still building, I'm still chosen. And that's the ultimate mindset shift from waiting to wielding, from hoping to harvesting, from surviving to sculpting the day, molded not by circumstance, but by conviction. They don't ask the day to be easy. They ask themselves to be strong. They don't wait for the world to be kind. They train themselves to be unshakable, because they know life is not about controlling what happens. It's about controlling who you are when it does. And who you are is a decision you make daily, not based on how you feel, but based on what you stand for. The 1% stand for something. That's what makes them dangerous. That's what makes them rare. They know their code. Their values are carved into their bones, and their life is a mirror of that internal code, not a reaction to external chaos. So while the 99% are pulled by trends, news, gossip, politics, and the opinions of the herd, the 1% anchor themselves to vision, to principle, to their mission, even if no one else believes in it. Because belief is not something you borrow, it's something you build. And the 1% are builders. They build belief like bricklayers, one truth at a time, one commitment at a time, one promise kept to themselves in the dark when it would have been easy to quit. And over time, that belief becomes armor, that belief becomes certainty, that belief becomes the most valuable asset they own, because it can't be bought, it can't be stolen, it can only be earned. That's why their results look different. That's why they move different. Not because they were given more, but because they dug deeper. They made their minds a fortress. They made their habits a temple. They made their life a testament to what's possible when you refuse to quit. The truth is, success isn't about speed. It's about alignment. It's not about grinding yourself into dust. It's about removing what's false so that what's true can rise. Because the most powerful version of you is already inside, buried beneath the noise, the programming, the trauma, the fear, the stories you didn't write but have lived for too long. And the 1%, they stop living the script they were handed and start writing their own. They go inward. They confront the shadows. They ask the hard questions. Why do I believe what I believe? Whose voice is really running my life? What have I accepted as permanent that is only temporary? They face those truths, and they don't flinch, because they know clarity isn't comfortable, but it is liberating. And once you see yourself clearly, once you stop lying to yourself, once you stop pretending that the mediocre life you've tolerated is just how things are, you become dangerous. Because no one can manipulate a mind that knows itself. No one can control a soul that walks in truth. No one can stop a human being who has nothing to hide, nothing to prove, and nothing to fear. That's where the power is, not in perfection, not in pretending, but in radical alignment, where your thoughts, your words, your actions, and your mission move as one, like an army, like a current, like a force of nature. And once you reach that level, you don't chase success. It follows you, because you've become magnetic. Because you're not pretending anymore. You're living your truth loud and clear. And truth, my friend, is irresistible. That's why the 1% don't scream for attention. They don't beg for approval. They don't parade their worth. Because when you know who you are, you don't need to prove it. Your life speaks louder than your words. You walk into a room and the air changes, not because you're arrogant, but because you're anchored. Not because you're loud, but because you're clear. You are no longer seeking direction. You are the direction. That's the difference between the average and the uncommon. The average react. The uncommon create. The average wish. The uncommon decide. The average wait to be choose themselves. And in that decision, everything that once felt impossible begins to bend. Doors open. People shift. Reality responds. Not because the world became easier, but because you became undeniable. That's the final secret most people will never understand. Your results will always match your mental blueprint. Not sometimes, not occasionally, always. And if your life doesn't look like the vision in your soul, it's not because you're cursed. It's not because you're broken. It's because somewhere along the way, you accepted a blueprint that was too small for your potential. So now you have a choice, a real one that doesn't need applause, doesn't need permission, doesn't need validation. You can keep living on autopilot, keep recycling excuses, keep telling stories that were never yours, or you can burn the old blueprint, you can rewrite the code. You can stop asking, what if I fail, and start demanding, what if I rise? You can stop shrinking to make others comfortable and start expanding to make your legacy inevitable. You can stop surviving and start architecting, because the life you want is already waiting for you. Not out there, but within you. It's coded into your instincts, etched into your imagination. It's in the whispers you've ignored, the callings you've suppressed, the ideas that haunt you in your quiet moments and scream, you were made for more. That more isn't a fantasy, it's a memory from your future, a version of you that's already built it, already lived it, and is now reaching back, saying, catch up. I'm waiting, and now you stand at the crossroads. The world will not stop for you. Time will not beg you to move, but your soul is not confused. It's starving for alignment, starving for purpose, starving to become what you were born to be. So decide, not with fear, but with fire. Decide like your life depends on it, because it does. Cut the noise, silence the critics, especially the one in your head. Stand tall, look your reflection in the eye and say, no more waiting, no more playing small. No more living a life that isn't mine. This is the day I rewrite the blueprint. This is the day I remember who I am. Not someday, not later, now. Because the 1% aren't different by chance. They're different by choice. And now, so are you. Welcome to the fire. Welcome to the version of you the world's been waiting to meet. Now go. Build it. Live it. Be it.